Here's a trivia question for you. Who's the last wide receiver selected by the Packers in the first round of the NFL Draft? The answer? With the 20th pick of the 2002 NFL Draft, Javon Walker.
It's exciting. I mean, to know that I was this great organization's last first-round pick, it kind of goes down in history. Every year the draft comes around, so it feels good to stay relevant a little bit.
Keeps your name in the news, doesn't it?
Yes, sir, it sure does. Stay relevant a lot when it comes to the Packers.
Mike Sherman was your head coach and the GM at the time when you were drafted. Brett Favre at quarterback, Donald Driver coming into his prime, Bubba Franks at tight end, Amon Green rushing for record-setting yards. That was a heck of an offense you guys had, right?
Yes, it was. And still to this day, I think I still put this offense up against any of the offenses through the years of the Green Bay Packers. So we had a solid team.
And that line, I want to say Clifton and Tauscher, left and right tackles. Mike Wall, left guard, I want to say. Marco Rivera, right guard. And Flanagan in the middle. Wow.
Mean group, right?
They were.
Look at him, that Wall, man. Wall, when I look back, that bald head, the beard. Oh, that was a solid group of
It was a solid group in front of you.
Yes, sir.
First year, you caught 41 balls, 716 yards, but 9 touchdowns. You played in several key games of Packers history, but I want to take you back to that game in Oakland, okay? It was a Monday night game. Remember, Brett Favre's dad had passed away. Very emotional. I remember it was a gray, dark day and then evening in Oakland, but you guys put on a show. I mean, it was 41-7 victory over the Raiders in Oakland. Take me back to that night. And was it kind of surreal because the catches you guys were making and the plays you were making were unbelievable?
You know what? Going back to that night, we knew that it was a lot going on between, Brett Favre and his family. But I can also remember, and to this day, Stan Drayton, who is now the Temple University's football coach, he sat down with me, and for some reason, I don't know why, but it registered what he told me that night. And it was just like, you're going to have a breakout game. And it was something simple like that, but it was just something that registered with me, and look at the performance we had that night. So it was great to be a part of.
Yeah, and there had to be tremendous emotion running through the team, right? I mean, that was your leader who was struggling, obviously, with a personal issue. And did that inspire you guys that night, do you think?
It did a little bit, I guess, because, once the game starts, it's a football game. So we just knew we wanted to make every play and every catch as far as to help the team win.
Mm-hmm. But and you guys are struggling to get back to the playoffs.
Yes, sir.
And that team came down a few weeks later. You came down to a situation where you're playing the Broncos, wrapping up the regular season at Lambeau Field. Do you remember this?
Yes, sir. Sure
and
do.
You guys are winning big because the Broncos had clinched the AFC and they were resting their guys. But you guys are winning big. All right. You guys have to win, and the Vikings have to lose to the lowly Arizona Cardinals. Remember that? So here we are wrapping up the game in Green Bay, and all of a sudden, it's like 41-7 or something that you guys were winning. And all of a sudden, there are these, you can hear these cheers in the crowd and everything. No reason to cheer whatever was going on in the field. There was nothing happening. But was it a surreal atmosphere that the crowd was reacting to a game thousands of miles away that was going to have a direct impact on whether your season continued or not?
Yes, sir. You know what? You appreciate it more now when you're watching football and how close these races are, because it can come down to a single play, the last drive. And the reason I can, bring that up is because I always think back to that game, last game of the season, to a final play, and then we're in. So that's what makes fun watching football games this year.
Yeah, playoff win in overtime over the Seahawks, and then you guys went to Philadelphia. And you guys really felt like you had to feel like a team of destiny, didn't you?
Yeah.
As that season was winding down.
We were hot. Nobody wanted to play us that year, and I can remember saying, if you were going to run into the Packers, we were hitting a hot streak at the right time, and then we hit that bump in the road in Philly.
Tell me about now. There are a couple of things about that game that are interesting. In that you guys are beating them up pretty good. In the end of the first half, there was a 4th and 1 on the goal line, and you guys didn't get it. And there was apparently an impassioned plea in the locker room or a declaration by head coach Mike Sherman that, hey, if we face 4th and 1 again, we're going for it, and we're going to ride your butts all the way to the Super Bowl, pointing at the offensive line. And then there was a 4th and 1 in the fourth quarter. in Philadelphia territory with a chance to kind of salt the game away. And you were on the field, and you know, tell me about that moment. You guys came up to the line of scrimmage. You tried to decoy them to jump off sides. They were so tired and beaten, as Bob McGinn said, they couldn't move. They wouldn't jump off sides. They didn't have the energy to do so. And yet Ahman Green has 1,800 rushing yards, and Sherman decides we're going to decoy them, and if they don't jump, we're going to call a timeout and punt. What were your thoughts at that time?
Doing what Coach says at the time. You know, obviously, being a young receiver, knowing the situational football, you just kind of go with the best and hopefully let our defense pull us out of that predicament, which they did. Because, you know, we had them, who would have thought, who would get a 4th and right? So, you know, there you go again, football, down to the last minute. So at the time, it was a great decision because, you know, you want your defense to play that out. And obviously on their end, the miracle that they had.
Well, and Jaywalk, that didn't end the game. And by the way, that only sustained that drive that got him a field goal to tie the game.
Yep.
Now we're in overtime. And the Packers, I believe, won the toss, and Brett is out there, and he threw a pass downfield that Dawkins intercepted. And I don't know about you, but I flashed back to the Monday night game in Oakland almost a month earlier. It was one of those balls, except that in Oakland in that Monday night game, somebody from the Packers, you or Driver or Ferguson or somebody, came down with that pass. That ball he threw up there, a moon ball, and instead of Driver or one of you guys coming down with it, it was Dawkins, the safety for Philadelphia, and that was the turning point of the game.
Yeah, that pass was to me actually, and I didn't even. It was a miscommunication with routes. So obviously, with the Philadelphia Eagles, if you go back to that play, they were running an all-out blitz. So that's why he just went back and threw it up. But when they were running an all-out blitz, I was running a slant. So if you really look at the film, when they blitzed, everybody came. Safeties and all. So when I run the slant, if he throws the slant, I go all the way up the sideline. But it was such a fast, just miscommunication, and it was just a rare back and throw it up.
He threw the out, and you were slanting.
He threw the go, and I was slanting.
Yeah.
And that's why Brian Dawkins was just back there, because he was the only safety rolling over the top of me.
Wow.
That's why it was back there.
Oh, man.
So just the miscommunication on the sight adjustment.
Did the team ever recover from that game?
Man, I can't say, you know. I still look back at that game because we were just so close, you know, and that would have been the team that if we would have went through Philly, you know, tell them what could have happened that year.
In 2004, the Packers and their vaunted rivals, the Vikings, played in a de facto NFC North Division championship game on Christmas Eve in Minneapolis. The Vikings, with Randy Moss and Dante Culpepper in their prime, against Brett Favre, Donald Driver, and Javon Walker, who led the Pack in receiving that season, scoring 12 touchdowns on the year.
It reminded me of what we just previously talked about with Philadelphia Eagles. It was, we were driving, and they were out on a blitz. We ran a sight adjust where I ran a slant. He threw the slant, I caught it, peeled around up the sideline, and obviously that's when we kicked the field goal and win. But that was a real tough game, and Minnesota was a tough team at the time. So we knew we were built for something that year moving forward.
Yeah, you had to feel pretty good.
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
Mike Sherman after that game told me that was a program win. You
Yes,
know
sir.
what I mean? 2 weeks later, you get the Vikings again in Lambeau Field. Now, Mike Tice, the coach of the Vikings at the time, said, you know, because they lost the following week. They didn't recover from that game. They lost the following week to Washington back into the playoffs. And Mike Tice said the only team that year in the playoffs that we could have beaten, that we could have gotten up enough to beat, were the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
You guys had won 2 games over them, 34-31, here and out there. What was your thought when you got the Vikings? Was it like, oh my God, we got these guys again?
Did not want to play him a third time. And that's because, you know, everybody knows you 3 times, something, third strike. So it wasn't like playing them as, you know, we had some type of fear or anything. It was just like, oh man, third time might be their charm. And they did. They came into Lambeau and spanked us.
In some ways, Walker felt like a fish out of water in Green Bay and tried to force his way out of town. In 2005, he blew out his ACL in the first game of the season and was placed on IR. The Packers traded him to Denver, granting his wish in 2006. Talk a little bit about leaving here. What was your feeling? Because you were a star.
Yes, sir. It was just kind of like, I think it was at a time where it really wasn't done as much as it is now. So when it does happen and I'm running into friends and other players from teams, it was like, man, Jay Walker, what you did then. Now it's like everybody's doing it now, meaning just wanting a new scenery and new look. And obviously, it happened to a lot of the greats here.
You wanted to leave. It was your intention after the 2004 season to move on. Was that your feeling, or was it just a contract? What was it? Take us back to that.
It was more so me wanting to move on, and with contract. So a lot of pieces. And then at the time, sometimes it's kind of hard to rebuild again with the same people. Maybe after they already know what you want to do. So it'd be hard for me to come back and play if everybody knows that I want to leave from the beginning.
Javon had one big year in Denver in 2006, but injuries took their toll. He finished up in Oakland with the Raiders, and by 2009, he was out of the league. His tenure in Green Bay was a mere blink of an eye.
That's what it is. It's life. It's giving me the ability to do what I do now as a leader with my other businesses. You learn all these traits from the people you're around. You learn all this from the coaches who teach you. So, if I was a young kid and I could put him in a sport in football, I would do it right away, because they learn values that'll take with them forever instead of learning it just trying to do anything.
Today, Javon Walker is a successful businessman who owns a number of apartment complexes and franchise yogurt stores. But he's best known in these parts as the answer to a trivia question that seems to come up every year in the NFL draft.